Okay, we do have a quorum. I'll go ahead and officially call the meeting to order. This is the Tampa Bay Water Regular Board Meeting. It is August 19th, 2019, and our first order of business will be to do the Pledge of Allegiance, led by my Vice Chair, Commissioner Eckers.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. And our first order of business will be to take public comment, and our first speaker will be Mark Clutho. And while he's walking up here, the Tampa Bay Water Board of Directors welcomes comments from the public about any issue or concern. Opinions provide valuable input to the board members. However, we request that public comments be directed to issues not directed personally against any board member or staff member. This provides mutual respect between the board members and the public. And there will be 3 minutes per speaker.
Mark
Thank you.
Clutho, Largo. Here's the slime off the bathroom faucet. $20 if you'll lick this thing. Anybody curious as to what it is? You're going to do that chlorine again. When there's chlorine instead of the chloramines, this doesn't happen. Anybody curious as to what it is? No. I love this, demand management implementation in Florida-friendly landscaping. And you don't have Florida-friendly landscaping out here. You have to mutilate what you have. How could that be friendly? Oh, yeah. Here's a headline. Study, warming revved 2017 hurricanes. Yeah, and this is a good one here. Price tag on climate change. Report estimates Florida may have to build $76 billion worth of seawalls by 2040. Oh, you think that's the actual price tag? Not. And then here, how to build amid a changing climate. Yeah, I said you better build a high-performance passive solar building here, and you fools didn't listen. Yeah, day-lit building? All the suits and ties in here. Yeah. You need a coat today. Right. Antarctica sea ice hits an all-time low. And July, the hottest month on record. You fools don't see what's coming. And no one's supposed to be held accountable. You ignore science. What dimwits. Won't be much longer. And those firecrackers out along the sidewalk, mutilated. It's so sad. So sad. The day of reckoning.
Thank you.
Oh.
David Geddes. Next speaker.
Hi, good morning. David Ballard Geddes Jr. I live on Georgia Avenue in Palm Harbor. When does the liberty, freedom, and happiness of our privileged leaders become an unhealthy establishment and our leaders, as privileged, begin to display characteristics of personal and individual motives separate from their proper purpose and show discourse acting on principles other than what they have originally brought forth and professed themselves to be acting upon, and deceptively begin using freedom as a course, as a political tactic to undermine the general welfare of all society, using liberty as a method for the taking of the health, safety, and welfare of the whole of civilian life, using political happiness and freedom to slowly formulate the absolute loss of the health, safety, and welfare of all society as its motive of process of aggregating the water resource, intent on laying the civilian society to bear under the liberty of its control, using the spirit and intent of this Constitution to bear the Gentiles as process due in the 14th Amendment. A spangled banner of shame is upon this government. The relationship of powers in this government with the civilian population are torn. Pinellas County and its partner affiliates, as based on the reclaimed water variance application, has violated our human rights to health, safety, and religion in regards to access our essential water supply, violating Pinellas County Home Rule Charter, Section 2.02E. The hypocrisy of our existing government and the bonds they claim to possess against us are constitutionally counterfeit to a jurisdictional state of utter and actual failure. Your ship of war concerning captures on land and water in Article 1, Section 10 is an unwarranted constitutional act of piracy and is to be dismantled. In light of this Constitution's warlike tactics in protection of civilian life, our society, and our loved ones, a relationship between leadership in this land and the civilian population must be restructured, revealed, understood, and restored to a health and social wealth that serves and benefits us all. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Robert Hoff. Good morning.
Morning, y'all. Let me start out with, I don't know what the nature of this meeting is and the discussion further on, but I'm here first, so I guess I got to say something. In Friday's paper, they had an editorial that was entitled, "Keep Working on the Tampa Water Plan." And I read it, and I was thinking about the past meetings that I've been to, and I think that the first line of the editorial says, "The board of the three-county utility Tampa Bay Water will meet again Monday to discuss Tampa's plan to convert treated wastewater into new drinking water supply." I believe that's an erroneous statement because the last time I was here, there was a representative from the city of Tampa who said, "I'd like to ease all minds. The city of Tampa would like to withdraw from further consideration the pending memorandum of understanding and agreement." It further goes on, continuing to promote the Tampa Water Plan. And finally, at the end, it says that Tampa was right to step back temporarily as a confidence-building measure. And my question to you would be, when you go in front of a board and you ask them for money and they tell you you can't have the money, do you walk away and say that's a confidence builder? And then the last statement says, do not stray, well, anyway, it says this is a revival of parochial political maneuvers that Tampa Bay Water was designed to overcome. Now, all these meetings have continued over how many months now? And how much discussion was had? And it's parochial? All right, so that's how I feel about that editorial. And really what I'd like to say is I'm reading the reporting from the Tampa Times on what happens at these meetings, and then I read an editorial from the same paper, and I wonder, what's the disconnect? Why is one saying one and the other one saying the other? So that's the question I'm posing to you folks. And as long as I'm up here, and I got a couple seconds left, we got the health crisis with all kinds of viruses, bacteria, that will continue to be a question as to where they come from and what they're doing to people. They've come up with studies that say that some of these microcystin toxins can create Alzheimer's, liver disease, Parkinson's, etc., and ALS. And I guess finally, the last thing I want to ask you is the quantity of water that we're getting. We've already reached the year's average,
Thank you.
and it's only August. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the end of the speakers that have signed up. Is there anyone wishing to speak that did not sign up? Okay, we'll move forward with the agenda, and we are now on the consent agenda. Are there any items to be pulled from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none.
Move approval.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Eggers, seconded by Commissioner Oakley, to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Like sign opposed, show that passed. And we will now move to the regular agenda, and we'll start with our general manager's report.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I'd like to discuss item G1 and then followed by item G2. The G1 is the Executive Committee report from the July 15th Executive Committee meeting. Most of the items that were covered at the meeting are somewhere on the agenda. I did report that we were fortunate to receive $750,000 grant for the Eldridge Wild Pump Motor Replacement Project. And we're working with DEP to work with agreements that are required for us to work with them to secure those funds. Moving on, if I may, Madam Chair, to item G2,
Okay.
this is a follow-up from the June board meeting where the board contemplated the possibility of maybe having either workshops, additional board meetings, or perhaps both. We were asked to provide a facilitator name or information about potential facilitation of those meetings. And what you will find under G2 is the email that I sent out outlining maybe some discussion points the board may want to discuss whenever you feel you want to move forward or have discussions on this matter, followed by a list of potential facilitators. Some have been used by Tampa Bay Water in the past, and there's a short write-up about each. And then there's also a potential scope if indeed the board did feel at some point you did want to move forward with this. But this was brought forward as a follow-up to that discussion. So that's what I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Let's open up for discussion, and anyone want to speak on G2? Yes, Councilwoman Rice. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In the next item, we're going to be discussing some of the legal analysis from Mr. Nickerson, and it's likely that we'll talk about having a further opinion from him on some other issues not related to TAP. So it seems like it may be premature to start discussing a facilitation process until maybe we get some of that information first. I'm interested in exploring the idea and hearing from my colleagues about the possibility of having more board meetings as an alternative to having more workshops in which a facilitator would need to be hired. I guess thirdly, it seems to me maybe we have some in-house talent as far as folks who would be prepared and more than qualified to run the workshops for us. And then lastly, I do have some concerns about sunshine law and just making sure that if we did go the facilitator route, that the facilitator isn't like polling individual board members as part of the process for putting together an agenda, because that violates sunshine law. So I just, my preference would be, I'd like to make a motion to defer this item until we get the future memos back from, well, I don't know if we're going to do that or not, but anticipating that we may get more information back from Mr. Nickerson, I move to defer this item.
Okay, any other discussion? There was a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Councilwoman Rice?
To the end of the meeting, or to defer to
No,
when?
defer it indefinitely.
Indefinitely.
Okay, she has made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, we are in discussion. Okay, so there is a second. Would you like to discuss? Commissioner Smith?
Yes, I'm not feeling a big rush to have facilitation and facilitators myself. I'm open to the idea, but I'm happy to defer it. That would be my choice.
Okay, Councilman
I feel
Miranda?
the same way Commissioner Smith does. If you look at my record at City Hall, we have these things, I never show up. Because the elected officials, in this case, this board, is the one that's responsible. And I feel that, and I'm not talking about this board, if I do something in the city and I vote on something, I'm not going to have the facilitators an excuse. Well, that's what I was told was best for the area. I'm the one that got elected. I'm the one that's responsible for my actions. So to have a facilitator, and again, not with this board, but any other place I sit in, I do not go. I also do not ever have engaged the individual who runs this Tampa Bay Water. I don't do it with Matt. I didn't do it with 3 others. I have an R&R model. R&R stands retain or remove. I don't waste time filling out little cards saying 25 or 35 or 55. That doesn't mean that I'm right or wrong. That's just the way I do it. So I don't mind that, but I never voted for a facilitator, and I won't do it in this issue either.
Okay, so let's kind of back up for a second. The reason this was brought up is to build consensus about within our group and to build kind of a collaborative spirit so that we could address the sensitive issues like reclaimed water and go into it with a unified front. So that it was brought up. Now, we can leave this as an option. Staff has done their work. They have made some recommendations. I would like to see if there's any recommendation internally for someone to, that could do facilitation, as brought up by Councilwoman Rice, because I do always think that you should look inside before you look outside. But that is why this was brought up. And at the time, everybody thought it was a great idea. Maybe by the end of the meeting today, we'll go back to it and we'll think it was a great idea. So Commissioner Eggers, do you have any comments?
I'm fine not using outside facilitator. I think we have talented folks here as well. My thought about having these workshops, I call it workshops, you want to call it another board meeting, is that over the last 2 years, I feel like we have been so mired, so much time has been spent on one issue that in some ways I think it's not allowed us to focus on the business of the day that we have here at Tampa Bay Water. And so my thought was that if we had a workshop in between, we could take all the time we need, be an hour meeting, or maybe it's only an hour, 2-hour meeting, but kind of deal with some of the heavier lifting items that we need to talk about and kind of get some consensus on. I also thought that it was important for us to start galvanizing our efforts and, getting in the same rowboat and talking the same, with the same spirit of solidifying our organization. So I thought it was an important thing, to your point about kind of getting some collaboration going. So I would still like to consider it a workshop/board meeting. I'm fine not using an outside facilitator.
Okay. Yes, and to just build on your points, there's way more to discuss than just reclaimed water. It's about the future of water. It's talking about growth. Our partners are experiencing growth, and that is breeding diversity on our board because some aren't. We've got debt. How are we going to address debt in the future? So there's many, many issues that, and it doesn't have to do with just reclaimed water. That is one item that could be in discussion. So I think that was the purpose of it. So any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second to defer the item. All in favor?
And that deferment is indefinitely.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed?
Aye.
Nay. Okay, so we have to raise our hands. Okay, all in favor, aye, please raise your hand. Okay, 4, and now all against? 4 to 4, so on the tie, it fails.
You want me to change my vote one way or the other?
Oh, okay. So thank you all very much. Good discussion. So we're back on the potential workshop follow-up. So I think, are you suggesting, Commissioner Eggers, that staff maybe bring back some inside facilitation that could happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly like to continue considering this and maybe having a little discussion about that. So maybe we could bring it back. I assume at this point that next month we would have an executive board meeting until otherwise changed.
Correct.
Yeah, but I'd like to hear a little bit more as to what we could.
I mean, and we can move to go to monthly board meetings too. I mean, that's still an option. Executive could meet right before the board meeting and we could go forward. But, it's up for discussion. Commissioner Oakley?
I wouldn't want a facilitator from outside, and I wouldn't want to spend that money that way because our budgets are tight, and we do have a lot of growth in our separate counties and cities, and we need to pay more attention to that. But we have very talented people here right here in Tampa Bay Water that can facilitate a workshop or whatever information we need, and I think it's best that way. And we spend a lot of time on one problem or one issue we've had this past year. So a workshop every now and then would be fine. Monthly meetings is a lot, especially when you come an hour and a half just to get to one meeting, an hour and a half back. So it takes a lot of time from where I'm coming from. So it pretty well takes care of a day.
Yeah.
But, I don't mind coming to workshop and discussing other items because there's items, we've been talking about reclaimed water for a long time. There's a lot of items we need to discuss other than that. So.
Well, and we can always, there's ways to do these workshops that we don't have to call everybody in, especially on a special day. We could very much abbreviate the board agenda, in the presentations and just use the board meeting for 2 or 3 hours to do the workshop. I've seen that too. So I'm going to, if it's okay, direct staff to come back with an internal person that would be qualified to facilitate a workshop in the future, and
Yes, ma'am.
what a potential agenda would look like.
Okay, and we do have people that have done that on occasions. We don't have any trained facilitators. It would be but we could certainly look internally to see what opportunities
Sure.
we have.
Okay. Is that agreeable to everybody? Very good. Yes, Mayor Marlowe?
Just speaking from our experience up in Newport Richey, we do workshops on a fairly regular basis. The difference between the workshop and the regular city council meetings is the workshops tend to be a lot less formal and a little more freewheeling. We do not generally bring in outside facilitators, although there have been a couple of cases where we have. It's just, staff will bring it and let the members of the council, or in this case, the members of Tampa Bay Water, just sit and have an open discussion And I appreciate Commissioner Rice's concerns about government in the sunshine. Certainly, any such meeting, workshop should be publicly noticed. It should be properly recorded, everything we would do for a regular meeting. Most of our workshops tend to be on the same day as a regular council meeting, and that would address Commissioner Oakley's concern about having to drive. And I'm not all that far shorter trip than you are time-wise. And it would work for, I think for us, if we get through the regular business at a regular Tampa Bay Water meeting, but then have a workshop where we can just, kick around ideas without having to go through the formality that we usually see at a Tampa Bay Water meeting. And I would recommend that, and whenever you want to call them, I'm good, so.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, good discussion. Thank you all very much. And you have clear direction?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Next item is H1. Barry Buenaventura is going to introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The action requested by item H1 is to authorize payment in full to the governance attorneys for their work performed to date at the board's request. They slightly exceeded the $10,000 limit imposed by the board in June for this work. Although they have offered to write off the exceedance, I recommend that they be paid in full. In April, the board asked that we consult with the governance attorneys, including George Nickerson, for further legal analysis of the interlocal agreement regarding reclaimed water. Based on action at the June board meeting when Tampa withdrew the TAP MOU from consideration, and based on discussion among the attorneys following the board meeting, Mr. Nickerson felt that the primary question he was asked to address was, what legal rights does the Tampa Bay Water Board have in the interlocal agreement regarding reclaimed water in light of the exclusive right that member governments have in Section 3.09 to develop, own, and/or operate all facilities for reclaimed water? Other questions were raised by the board, but this was the primary question. Mr. Nickerson's memo was provided to the board in early August, and it is included in your agenda materials. Since then, we have received a response to Mr. Nickerson's memo from the City of Tampa, and a second memo from Mr. Nickerson dated August 16th, clarifying that his August 5th memo only addressed the first broad question about reclaimed water, that he did not address the board's other questions, and that he specifically did not explore the issue of augmenting surface water sources by the introduction of reclaimed water. Mr. Nickerson's clarifying memo also alluded to a conflict of interest for the Neighbors Giblin and Nickerson firm because the City of Tampa has taken issue with Mr. Nickerson's memo. Based on that disagreement, the Neighbors Giblin and Nickerson firm has decided it can no longer work with Tampa Bay Water on questions concerning TAP or the analysis and conclusions contained in the memo from the City Attorney's Office. This is a decision the City and the Neighbors Giblin and Nickerson firm have made. When I became aware in May of the Neighbors Giblin and Nickerson firm's service as bond counsel for the City of Tampa, I did not believe then, and I do not believe now, that the Neighbors Giblin and Nickerson firm's service as bond counsel for the city conflicts with its 20 years of service as bond counsel for Tampa Bay Water, or that it conflicts with Mr. Nickerson or Mr. Giblin sharing with the board, at the board's request, their experience and analysis of the governance documents they worked on 20 years ago. They were not asked by Tampa Bay Water to argue for any particular position or conclusion. Rather, they were asked for their analysis. I would also note that Mr. Nickerson's opinion is consistent with the opinion my partner and I provided to Tampa Bay Water in 2017 regarding the use of reclaimed water for potable purposes and the interlocal agreement. A subsequent opinion we issued specifically addressed the TAP MOU and the interlocal agreement, which Mr. Nickerson has now stated twice he did not address in his August 5th memo, and the TAP MOU has been withdrawn by Tampa. So again, the only action requested by item H1 is to authorize payment in full to Dean Mead and Neighbors Giblin and Nickerson for the work they performed to date at the board's request.
Move the item.
Second.
Madam Chair.
Okay, can you state the exact motion, please?
It's to pay in full, authorized payment in full of legal fees and costs incurred to date. And, oh, sorry, I guess not to authorize any further, but to authorize the payment in full of legal fees and costs incurred to date.
But not the extension.
Aren't
Use
they,
him for
isn't the
further
firm
work.
saying that they don't want an extension at this point?
Yeah, because they said they have a conflict.
Right,
That's
so,
in the memo.
right, so just to pay up to date, including the slight overrun of the budget, and pay them up.
That's why I wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that was your
sorry.
motion.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so we do have a motion and the second by Mayor
And
Marlowe.
that was my understanding, what we were I was
Yes.
seconding as well.
Very good. Okay.
So I'm sorry, so the motion is to pay what's owed now,
Yes,
nothing,
right, correct.
Not to use them for anything forward.
okay. Well, I'd like to say something to that one.
Well, we're in discussion.
Okay.
Yes, you're recognized.
I think it's very important to acknowledge, I mean, I've read Mr. Nickerson's letter, the City of Tampa's letter, Barry's letter, the response several times. The Tampa's opposition to using the neighbors Giblin and Nickerson firm was based on the work on TAP. And yet, in many other instances in our backup materials, and especially looking at the verbatim record of the legal meeting, if you look at the George Nickerson's letter, he acknowledged that there were 3 questions that he did not get into. And those are generic questions that don't deal with the TAP memo specifically. And that was also echoed by Don Kahn in the verbatim of the legal minutes, that those 3 questions were generic enough in nature that we could definitely, certainly ask Mr. Nickerson to address those issues not dealing with TAP.
Okay.
So I actually have a substitute motion that we would authorize additional funds to be used for Mr. Nickerson addressing those 3 issues without a firm expenditure cap.
Okay, we have a substitute motion on the floor. Is there a second to the substitute motion? Which, go ahead and state it again, just so it's clear.
My substitute motion is that the board authorize additional fund, in addition to paying for the first letter, that we authorize additional funds to be authorized from the legal services budget to have Mr. Nickerson address the 3 issues that are referenced on the first page of his letter, that were also referenced by Mr. Kahn as being generic in nature. I mean, I could read out the questions if you want me to, but it has to do with whether Tampa Bay Water has the legal right to assign its rights or interests in water supply facilities to a member government. It has to do with understanding and clarifying the references of reclaimed water. And also, importantly, can Tampa Bay Water and Tampa be the sole signatory? Oh, I'm sorry, that was a reference to TAP, so I'll strike that one. But there is a question over who can be party to such an agreement.
Okay, so we do have a substitute motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and Councilman Miranda.
Thank you. I just speak in general terms to both the motions. You know, we have 8 attorneys in Tampa Bay Water. Tampa Bay Water only has 6 customers, and they're all sitting here. Not 10 million customers, 6. They're wholesalers, not retailers. So let's understand this. You got 6 member governments with 6 attorneys. and 2 attorneys here that, in my judgment, they do a fantastic work. The 6, of which I know maybe 1 or 2 on the other side of 6-member governments, they do the work in the excellency of whoever they represent. So now we're talking about hiring other attorneys to do what? To tell these 6, and then we'll hire other attorneys to tell those what they said. You can have 1,000 attorneys and have 6,000 different opinions. I wasn't here in '98 when it was West Coast, but I would imagine that the war started. We were not involved. City of Tampa was sitting out there, bathing in the sunset. We were not involved in any of that. However, we chose to be. We didn't have to. We chose to be. The others had to, because there was no alternative. So now I sit here and I tell myself, yeah, go on, keep hiring attorneys. At the end of the day, somewhere in the future, and I won't be here, I guess because of my age, but I'll tell you what, something is going to happen here. You can remember what I'm saying today. If we don't solve this internally, whichever way it goes, you're going to be in another water war. I can see it now. Memos going here, memos coming back, this attorney, this, that, editorial, this, that, and the other, doesn't match this, doesn't match that, and you want to get a clear opinion. You can go to 15 different Circuit Court of Appeals and get 15 different opinions. That's what's wrong with this country today. When you go out and you try to find a conservative attorney, you know where to go. When you go out and want a liberal attorney, you know where to go. It's the same thing in the courts. So we try to do what we can here, and when we can't solve it, well, the hell with it. Get the can down the road and somebody else will take care of it. We got elected to solve these problems. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Councilman Miranda, you are a wise man. You said exactly what I was going to say. I mean,
Well, then you're a wise woman.
no, I'm not. No, I'm just Councilwoman Rice.
Okay, let's be real. George Nickerson is one of the founding fathers of Tampa Bay Water. He has been highly regarded by everyone in this room as one of the group of 18. It was his job to take the ideas and put pen to paper and to write the contract. He's one of the original drafters of the interlocal agreement. We didn't just pick some name out of a hat to try to keep fishing for an answer that we wanted. During the attorney meeting that took place on June 17th, this summer, Tampa's attorney had an opportunity during that entire meeting to state objections to Mr. Nickerson's involvement. And instead, we didn't get a letter from the city of Tampa opposing Mr. Nickerson until he gave us an opinion that you didn't agree with. We just cannot, I'm sorry, I just cannot leave it standing, the statement that George Nickerson is just one of many attorneys that we keep on piling on and adding more fees and not really solving our issues. We purposely went to Mr. Nickerson because we valued the role he played in the creation of the charter which founded Tampa Bay Water.
I'll tell you who founded Tampa Bay Water was the Florida legislature, not one attorney.
I'm sorry?
Who founded Tampa Bay Water came out of the Florida legislature, not one attorney, or 2 or 3. I mean, our county attorney, 36 years. He was involved in the agreement. He knows as much as Mr. Nickerson does. So I think it's going back to Councilman Miranda's point. You can grasp and pull a gazillion attorneys out there that were involved. They advised the Florida legislature, staff wrote the legislation to create Tampa Bay Water. Just wanted to clarify that.
If it's appropriate, why don't we ask the 6 attorneys if they're here, or the 5, if they want to say a couple of words to us so we can understand where they come from. I don't know if they're here or not. I see one of them. I don't know the others. Can they?
Sure, if you
I'd like to
would
take the
like
time now
ask
to solve
somebody
this
to come
problem.
forward.
Because they looked at me, and I'm,
And before we do that, I know that Barry Bonaventura would like to just add a comment before we do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, I want to make clear that, based on my reading of the letters we've received from Mr. Nickerson, particularly the second one, it's my understanding that the firm would not undertake to do the additional work that has been suggested, or that, we consider asking them. If the board directs me to do so, I would, of course, make that request to the firm, but I want to make it clear that it's my understanding that they would decline to do that work.
And the city of Tampa would object because of the conflict. And they are not willing to waive the conflict.
I'm not the mayor, so that's up to the mayor.
Okay, so you would like to call somebody
If
forward?
anybody, one of the 6-member governments here that wants to pass their intelligence to us, more than what we know that is going on in this legal thing, I don't want these bills to consume a large part of this budget. I don't know if anybody's willing to come up or not.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Jan McLean with the City of Tampa. Commissioner Merman, to start from the end and work towards the beginning, is accurate. The city would not be waiving any potential conflict by the firm of Neighbors Giblin Nickerson working on any of these questions that are identified on the list from this point forward. We believe that the opinion that was issued by Mr. Nickerson was not narrow, even given as much as some of the comments that were made in the media with regard to how his opinion was applied. We believe that the other questions that have been identified, so that there were 4 that were chosen within that meeting, that they too, as they would be applied, would potentially impact adversely the city of Tampa and other members. And so at this point in time, and even more specifically, I know Councilwoman Rice was trying to parse the questions, but even more specifically, the one with regard to the reference to reclaimed water at the end of section 3.08A is the section entitled Surface Water Sources, which applies to the city of Tampa. So the question would obviously be applicable to the city of Tampa. Just wanted to clarify what the city's position would be with regard to any potential conflicts going forward. I'm available for any questions.
Follow-up question. Yes. Is your objection to any analysis having to do with Tampa at all, or just TAP?
Any analysis would be done with regard from the firm of Neighbors Giblin and Nickerson.
I'm just curious why you didn't raise this issue back in June when we were sitting down and talking to Mr. Nickerson.
I took my concerns back to the city attorney, and I wasn't actually sure, personally, how the report was going to come out, whether we were going to have a group discussion, whether it was going to be a report, and what resulted was a legal opinion. And in the scope of the legal opinion, it was very clear that it was applicable to the city and others.
So you decided to make the statement after
That's all.
After you got the letter from Mr.
I'm not going to
Nickerson.
answer any other questions with regard. The city of Tampa is officially not waiving any of the potential conflicts with regard to any further legal opinions from the firm of Neighbors Giblin and Nickerson.
Okay, Commissioner Smith.
I think it's clear from this memo from the firm that they believe that the firm believes that any further analysis by their firm would necessarily address matters that could impact the interests of both Tampa Bay Water and the city of Tampa, which could constitute a conflict. I think if we continue with them, we are wading into a quagmire of all the attorneys tangling up on whether there's a conflict here and whether there's a conflict there. And in the absence of Mr. Nickerson being here today to discuss this further and with the advice of our own counsel, I mean, I just think it's really clear to me that we need to try to proceed in a way that, especially for some of the concerns that Mr. Eggers has raised, we need to move forward in a way that is not trying to walk between the landmines that we would have if we kept on with this firm. I appreciate his history and experience in the creation and formation of Tampa Bay Water, and possibly, we can use his counsel some other way or his history some other way, but not as an attorney.
We can vote on the substitute motion, but if it would pass, I would just want to tell you all, I feel like it's out of order. I respectfully would like to ask the maker of the substitute motion to withdraw it, because I think it's a moot point. The firm obviously does not want to do any further business on this matter in front of us. And I think to kind of try to wedge it in there, like you said, the landmines, I think is going to be counterproductive to what we're trying to do here at the board.
So we cannot even ask Mr. Nickerson if Tampa Bay Water has the legal right to assign its rights and interest in water supply facilities to a member government.
I
can't even ask
mean,
that
it's pretty
question.
clear from the memo that they are not going to be involved. I mean, is that your opinion?
That is my opinion. I again would say that if the board directs me to do so, I will ask that firm if they would answer specific questions. I believe the answer to the question would be, if for any question related to reclaimed water, interlocal agreement, it's my understanding their answer is going to be to decline to undertake that work. Yep.
Well, I see the last sentence, help me out here. The last sentence of Mr. Nickerson's second letter is, the firm does not believe it would be appropriate for us to undertake any engagement regarding TAP specifically, or to the analyses and conclusions contained in McLean's memo. So I interpreted that sentence to mean stay away from TAP.
May I respond? Okay. Again, I would, take to them any specific request from this board, but as to a question pertaining to a conflict of interest between that firm and another one of their clients, that is for that firm and the other client to come to a decision on. It is not something that I could, argue with them to undertake. I would ask it if directed to do so and relay the answer to this board.
Commissioner Smith?
I just think it'd be pretty hard. I think we would be inviting a lot of challenges and argument if we try to separate the tentacles of the questions that come up around the TAP discussion and the rights to reclaimed water from some other questions. I think we will be inviting a tangle of other questions. Is this related this way to any of the questions involved in the TAP discussions or not? It just seems like asking for trouble.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, you recognize.
Out of courtesy, and I can count, I can withdraw my substitute motion, but I do have to state a deep concern that there's a pattern here. That when Tampa didn't like the way that things were going with the 1.6 million that we offered. They took it off the table when we asked for more transparency. And now, alas, that Mr. Nickerson gave us an opinion that Tampa didn't like. Now they're using a legal technicality to block us from asking the same attorney any more questions.
Are you withdrawing the substitute?
I withdraw the substitute.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilman Miranda.
I'm not going to say anything. Now you understand what I said earlier about the last comment, why you need attorneys? I had two friends that got divorced once. One of them spent over $1 million to get a dog. He never wanted the dog. He just didn't want her to have the dog. Thank you.
I guess you have to read between the lines on that. Okay. This is exactly why, this is the same place we were at the last meeting. We are not agreeing on the direction we need to go in. And I can't really hold back anymore, but I'll be honest with you all. We are teetering on the edge of water war.
Said it.
Teetering. And if you don't think so, and we think, I love what the Times editorial said, we cannot teeter on the legal arguments anymore. We have to go back to the science, the environmental aspects, the engineering. We need to let the city continue with their engineering so we can get the results back, evaluate them, and say, we're going to move forward or not. But this legal wrangling over one attorney, and let me tell you, there were so many attorneys involved in Tampa Bay Water. I sat on the Environmental Protection Committee back in 1997. And when we agreed to do all this, and it's not just one attorney. I think the next attorney will have another problem, the next attorney after that, going back to Councilman Miranda's point. So we're all right in a way because we're forming our opinions, but we're not matching up. And there is very little agreement on this board. And every single step we take, we're constantly counting votes. Are we going to win? Is there 4 or 5? How many? You guys, we can't keep doing this. And I'm saying we either bring a facilitator in here and help us just hash it out and just get it out of our system. But there is so much lack of trust between some member governments and others. We really cannot continue to operate like this any further. And I'm sorry, I just had to say it. Mayor Marlowe.
What I'm seeing today speaks, I think, very clearly to the need for us to sit down in a less formal setting, in a workshop setting.
Absolutely.
And let's start with discussing where do we want to be in 15, 20 years and work backward from there. I'll be quite open. I've shared this with staff before. Whether we like the idea of drinking reclaimed water that has been treated, or as Commissioner Miranda once described it as poopy water, at some point we're going to have to deal with that as this area keeps growing. My colleague from Pasco County over there can tell you that the trips over here get worse because the traffic is getting worse because the population over there is exploding between Dade City and here. We're seeing this coming up in South Hillsborough County. It's not going to get better on its own. And I think if we can sit down together in a less structured, perhaps, or less formal setting to just hash out, okay, where are we now? Where do we need to be? What is it going to take for us all to work together to get this entire region where it needs to be 20 years down the line? I think we'll all be a lot happier. There'll be a lot less animosity, and we will be serving our constituents better by basically sitting down and let's work through this. Individual projects like TAP, take that off the table for the moment. Let's talk about where do we need to be as a region and what we can all come up with. And if part of that is ultimately we try to fund part of the engineering and other stuff on TAP as a step for us to learn better what the benefits and the disadvantages are of using reclaimed water as potable water, so be it. But I think we all need to sit down.
Totally agree. That's why I thought we were moving in that direction. Yes, Commissioner Eggers.
Well, Mayor, I think well said, and I think I think there's just a lot of frustration in the room. I know, for one, that Pinellas County, I've been told no differently, wants to be in Tampa Bay water for years and decades to come. We will have differences, and we will have disagreements with our member governments and with Tampa Bay Water. And so I just want it to be said that we plan to be a part of the solution to problems going forward, and not identifying problems that don't need to be addressed preliminarily. City of Tampa, I wish them all the best in their search for this project. I do agree with you that the region and the state is going to continue looking at reclaimed water as a potential water source. I have a note down here to talk about doing an agreement for this board that we embrace reclaimed water and its potential use as a reuse project, and that we as Tampa Bay Water should have it as something that we continue to investigate going forward. I also had a note here to say that we commit to any conversations with SwiftMud to be a part of super regional cooperation that may be needed, because there are other issues that go beyond our borders. I mean, I think this board and the way this group has gotten together over the years has been admirable. And for anybody, and I really, the comments that you made, I understand your frustrations, but that doesn't do anything but elevate the tension that people feel about where we are. There are issues, and that's why I thought workshops would be good. Potential to discuss different ways to get water to the growth areas of our membership group, because they're different. And I think that's important. So I think we talk about those different water source. I think trying to figure out how to minimize waste in our system is a good thing, and we all have it. I frequently give the City of Tampa a hard time about their system, but we all have issues with our systems that we can work on to be better users of our own water. So there's a lot of solutions here. I think that we can all work together on that. But I think that where we got off the rail a couple years ago probably was, we don't need to be blessing a project that has so many questions. The City of Tampa is moving forward as a pioneer in our area about a project. Go forth, do it, get some state support, get your council support, get all the medical, the research support behind it. It will be good for you, it will be good for the region and any efforts that we make. But don't ask us to bless a project that goes outside of the norm that we normally do. And I think that's where we got off track. Now, let's get back talking to each other. I think, Mayor, your point was a good one. To me, there's so much more good with Tampa Bay Water than there is issues with it. And we've got a good structure here to work not only for our own region, but even beyond our region. So I'm not on the verge of water wars. I think if you are on the verge of water wars, then you are looking for ways out and not ways in, ways to be a creator of problems and not creator of solutions. And I think we have a good group here and a good staff out there that can work together to find solutions to challenges that we have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further comments? Okay. Substitute motion was withdrawn. We do have a motion by Commissioner Smith that was seconded by Mayor Marlowe to go ahead and pay the bill That is over the hours over and above what we approved. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that passes. Okay, next item, yes.
The next item is I-1, is a presentation on the South Central Hillsborough Wellfield Generator and Motor Replacement Project, and be presented by Engineering Manager, Mr. John Kennedy.
Morning. Good morning, board members. Agenda item I-1 is asking for your approval for a construction contract to increase our generator capacity and replace motors in South Central Hillsborough County. South County is one of our Priority 1 facilities due to its size and its strategic location in our system. This project will replace 17 well pump motors that have been in service since the 80s and are at the end of their useful life. We will replace 2 of the older of the 6 generators on site, which have also really reached the end of their life, and we will be adding 4 additional generators so that we are in compliance for several years to come with FDEP requirements for average day capacity for this service area. All of the new units will be fixed and not wheeled, as the photo on the right shows you. This is one of our older units that will be replaced, and they will be muffled for compliance with regulations with county noise ordinances for placement of generators in neighborhoods. With this, the details of your bidding are in your agenda item, and staff recommends award to the low bidder, the firm of O'Galli Electric, for the amount of $2,306,355, contract 2019-057.
So move.
Thank you, John, for that. Who made the motion?
So
Motion by Councilman Miranda, second by Commissioner Smith, to approve item I-1. Is there any further discussion? Thank you, John, for that report, and this is the necessary moves we need to take to move forward with the demand problem in South County. So I appreciate your efforts on that. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that passed. And you're going to do I-2?
Yes, ma'am. Agenda item I-2 is a continuation of a series of presentations and information we've been providing to the board on keeping up with demands in South Central Hillsborough County. This is just a summary of the times we've either been in front of the executive committee of the board or in front of the full board with either a consent agenda item or a presentation on how we intend to meet the growing needs in South Hillsborough County. And we've been describing this in many terms, and in order to address your questions, we have developed this graphic, and what we are doing today is we're presenting how we're meeting those needs both in the short and the long term. And you can see on this graphic we have short-term needs that are going to be met by a booster pump station that you supported our recommendation in June, and what that's doing is it's increasing our ability to deliver existing supplies through existing pipelines. Then a little bit longer out, because of the length of time it takes us to develop a major pipeline, we will be bringing on a new pipeline to serve this area. Again, however, it will be increasing our ability to deliver existing supplies now through the additional pipeline. And then long-term out, in the 2028 and beyond, as Ken Hurd will be presenting to you in a little bit on feasibility work that we're doing on our master water plan, we'll be bringing online additional new water supplies. So it's really a 3-phased approach that we're taking out here, and we'd like to bring you up to date on where we are with these. And why it's important to have a short-term program is because the acceleration of the demands has been outpacing our ability to keep up with them. And that's really the simple end of it. And we came to you in June with a recommendation for a program that we could get online in time to meet those growing demands. Where do these growing demands come from? The graphic on the right is an excerpt from the county's submittal pursuant to the Master Water Supply Contract, Exhibit K, that they submit to Tampa Bay Water. And these are their demand projections. And I circled in red on this graphic what we're looking at for South County demand projections. And their water use to date is pretty well tracking the the demand projections that are in this table for time that's already gone by. So we came to you in June asking for your support and received it to take our existing 49 MGD of capacity, million gallons a day of capacity, and do what we could between Hillsborough County and Tampa Bay Water to increase that capacity to 55 million gallons a day. And that's a two-phase program. One part of it is Hillsborough County stepping more water through its central Hillsborough plant, and the other part is Tampa Bay Water adding a booster station. So by doing those two things, we're increasing from 49 to 55 million gallons a day, and that's going to bridge the gap between now and when we can get a pipeline developed into this area. We'd like to report that we've got progress on both fronts since you approved this in June. First off, Hillsborough County for spring 2019 averaged almost 12 million gallons a day at a central facility. That's up from its historic 10 to 11 MGD at this facility. They're evaluating, can they take more? They may be able to, they may not be able to, but they're evaluating it. On Tampa Bay Water's side of the coin, we have focused our area to put a new booster pump station along our Brandon South Central transmission main. We are identified and are evaluating a dozen parcels that are on the market for sale right now for their acreage and their zoning and how far they are away from the main pipeline, because that's going to affect how much transmission main we need to do to connect them. We hope to come to you in October or December with option agreements for a pipe for a booster pump station, and we are also preparing procurement documents for a design and construction engineer for this facility. The aerial photo on this drawing shows you, this is an aerial photo of one of our booster stations in a neighborhood, okay? This area of Hillsborough County is not industrial, it's primarily residential and commercial. And we have another booster station in another part of Hillsborough County that is 100% residential area. This one's between Fletcher and Bears Avenue in a neighborhood on the left side of North Boulevard. This is what it looks like, and this would be similar to the booster station we'll be putting in a neighborhood in South County. It'll match the area that's there. This will be about a 1,000 horsepower facility, but we do not intend to put a generator at this location so that we can be sensitive to noise requirements of the neighborhood. It's likely to be on a smaller lot. Going beyond that, for the new water supplies, this ties to what Ken Hurd's going to be presenting to you later this morning. We're going to be developing some additional water supplies from either one or a combination of the three sources of water that are under evaluation that you considered in December when you approved the master water plan. And those additional water supplies will be delivered to this area through the existing transmission mains and the new transmission mains. And what I'd like to talk about is, regardless of whether we are locating at one spot or another in South County, we need to bring additional transmission main into this area. Our obligations under the master water supply contract are to meet your requirements for pressure, quantity, and quality at points of connection. Major pipeline takes years and can stand alone or be combined with other master water plant projects that are being studied by our planning group. The diameter is going to be something between 3 and 5 foot diameter, so it's a major transmission main, and there's a significant amount of right-of-way acquisition that's going to have to go with this project. And that and its permitting are why it's going to take the amount of time necessary to bring it online. And recognizing that amount of time, that's why we're building the booster station, to tide us over that gap. Tampa Bay Water is working to complete the corridor studies that you previously authorized, and we are supplying the data to the master water plan feasibility studies, especially for potential sightings for some of their alternatives that they're looking. And this was made up before last Friday. At that point, we were standing by for a request from the county for the new delivery point, but Friday afternoon, we did receive in writing a request from Hillsborough County for a new delivery point in South Hillsborough County. And this is very good news for us. On this graphic is a similar request that we got back in 2003 for a new delivery point in Hillsborough County that turned out to be its central facility. We received this request in the fall of 2003, and by the fall of 2004, both this board and Hillsborough County governments had approved a joint project agreement that identified nearly a dozen projects that each entity, some of them were being done by Hillsborough County, some of them by us, to make sure that we kept ahead of the growth that was going on at that time. So here we are 15 years later, and we're pretty much at the same point, trying to keep up at growth with something that's going to turn into a shared interest in resolving the problem. Would like to talk for a minute about when we talk about points of connection, you can consider them delivery meters, okay? Tampa Bay Water is a wholesaler. We only have 20 meters at which we supply your individual and collective needs. Changing our delivery meters was anticipated in the master water supply contract. They're called Exhibit C points of connection, and they're identified in Section 10. And be that as it may, over the past 2 decades, there have been, to the original list of 27 points of connection, we removed 12 of them, and we modified or added 7 of them. So there's been 19 changes to the original list of 26, and today we have a total of 20. We tabulated these and sent them to you as part of a information-only item back in December 2018 under Agenda Item C4, so that the board and more especially your staffs could gain comfort that this is ground that's been traveled before. Of those 19 changes, 13 were recommended unilaterally and implemented by this board and funded by this board. 3 of them were requested unilaterally by the affected member government and paid for by the member government. And 3 of them were determined to be in the joint interest. There was an advantage for Tampa Bay Water and the member government. And so there was a sharing in costs and benefits proportional to what it is each government would receive. And I would suggest in South County, that's probably the basket that we're headed towards for this effort, something that has a shared benefit. So we were excited to get that written request on Friday afternoon, and this authorizes the staffs to have elevated levels of discussions because of the amounts of money involved, both on the county and Tampa Bay Water side. We'll be working hard to identify as many details as possible so that we can come back with something like, it could be a memorandum of understanding, or it could be a joint project agreement, but a approvable interagency agreement for both governments to consider. And with that, that's our presentation. Be happy to answer your questions.
Okay, that's a very good job. Now, is this what's in this report, is that the timetable for the projects, the pipeline and the pump station, the pipeline, and then wherever the last one was?
New supplies for master water
New
plan?
supply, yes.
Yes, ma'am. We have identified a 6 to 8 year to get major pipelines online. We shared our detailed schedules with the county staff last Monday, and we invited them to engage other county departments, especially their right-of-way acquisition department, to
Right.
see if we had made assumptions in our schedule that perhaps the county could benefit from and give us some insight to whether they could help us hasten that schedule. But we're looking at a significant amount of acquisition. So that's why we want to get the booster station online in 2024 to bridge the gap.
Is that for you mean the land acquisition for the pipeline?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. And do you know where it's going to go?
We'll work with it. Generally speaking, it's been described as south and west of the, in the vicinity of the Hill County's southeast landfill on a property that's already owned by the county, but the exact details are to be worked out.
Okay, and so when will you start the PD&E on the pipeline?
Well, we'll have to,
You want to do the land acquisition first and then do the PD&E?
we're going to have to, your agency staff is going to recommend to this board a public outreach program in concert with the county so that we can have effective neighborhood comment.
We
on
do
corridors
need
and-
that, and that was my next
construction.
comment.
And-
And please don't put that pump station in a neighborhood.
Well, there's good and bad news for that, Commissioner. We have other pump stations in neighborhoods, and we are a good member in those neighborhoods.
Okay.
There won't be chemical feed facilities, and there won't be a generator in this facility. It'll look like a house.
Okay, so
everything
I
will be
guess
inside.
as long as there's adequate public outreach, and you visit with the residents of the neighborhood it's going to go into, I think you can probably get over that.
And in addition, if I may, the county itself is looking at a significant amount of right-of-way for its transmission mains in and out of its proposed campus site. So we're going to be recommending to you a united front of county and Tampa Bay Water route selection meetings with the public.
Okay, not to bring this up, I'm sure our attorneys will work out an agreement between us and you. Commissioner Smith.
Yes, and thank you, Commissioner Merman, for highlighting the need for neighborhood outreach and participation, and I feel confident we'll have that. You said you got a letter from our county on Friday?
We did.
And was that from the county commissioner or from the administrator?
No, it's from the utility director, George
From
Cassidy.
George Cassidy.
Okay.
County letterhead, so we're good
Yeah.
to keep moving.
So can I have a copy of that
Yes,
letter?
ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, well, first of all, I really appreciate the report. Thank you. It was great. It really kind of lays out the path very clearly. So the issue now is to work out the cost sharing and kind of the I guess the direction or the path that this pipeline will be put in. At this point, do you feel pretty certain that that pipeline is going to have to be a part of our delivery system going forward?
Yes, I do. We need to add a conveyance. Tampa Bay Water has more permitted supply than it can deliver through its pipelines.
Yeah, thank you for that point, because that's been my feeling all along, that we have to tie our existing system to whatever goes on in South County. I mean, it's one thing to have an independent system supplying water, but it's also, I think, reassuring for everybody that we have that connector. So I'm assuming that the only delay in starting forward with this is exactly what you identified this today, which is the agreement between the county and Tampa Bay Water and the discussion with the community.
Yes,
Okay.
those are the long lead items.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
And the land acquisition.
Yes, which
That's a
comes
big
as a
deal.
result of community outreach.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the report.
Thank you, John. Do you need us to approve the report?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay. Next.
Yes, ma'am. The next item under J1 is demand management implementation and the Florida-friendly landscaping program, and Mr. Dave Bracciano will be making those presentations.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I'm going to make two presentations this morning. First is the Florida-friendly landscaping program, and I'm going to ask for a recommendation to approve agreements at the end. Just want to kind of give you a little bit of background on what does the program do. This is the information on it. Provides information to help the public conserve water, reduce pollution, and enhance their environment by changing landscape practices. And you can kind of see some of the photos here on what a Florida-friendly landscape actually looks like. The program focuses on these 9 Florida-friendly landscaping principles that are incorporated into the design and maintenance of the landscape, and there's 9 of them there. Most of these principles are directly related to the efficient use of water and supplemental irrigation, and obviously these items link well to water conservation, stormwater, solid waste, and estuary-based goals. That is one of the major reasons why the program has been so successful across the region. And in fact, your 3 counties and member governments were leaders in the state in the development and implementation of this program. The picture on the lower right is actually a workshop that occurred about 2 weeks ago in Hillsborough County that brought the Tri-County together through all the FFL programs. And so these occur on a regular basis. And these 9 principles, which I hope all of you are undertaking, are key to that. And you'll see, obviously, that we want to focus in on water efficiency and basically stormwater are our major issues. The local programs are administered through your extension offices. Tampa Bay Water provides baseline funding and coordination, and members now provide coordination through advisory committees in each county, which were reinstituted back in 2014. Some additional funding positions is provided in some of our member governments' service areas for additional local focus. I think Hillsborough County's got some additional funding for this year. Additionally, the program was expanded to include homeowner associations and new construction. And we do provide focus for those as well. These are some of the 2018 results. You can see that we estimated 200,000 gallons of water saved per day. Now, that's not long-term savings. Those are what occurred that year or what were estimated. through interaction with the University of Florida. 15,000 attendees were there, 166 irrigation evaluations, and 58 landscape or homeowner association evaluations, and that basically is either working with the homeowner association, the coordinator's actually working with the homeowner association to help them modify their landscapes at the common area, or actually modify the actual codes, covenants, and restrictions within the homeowner association to allow all the homeowners to actually make changes in their landscapes. A lot of contacts to the public, a lot of website hits. Master gardeners are really an invaluable element of this program. And you can see that because of all those master gardeners, which are trained for specific expertise, and then work in addition to the FFL coordinators, they're getting paid, they put their time into this. And so the value of services are something that was estimated and created by the University of Florida to estimate the value if folks are going to go out into the private sector and get that type of research done for them and information, and it's over $1 million. So there's quite a bit of value for this program. Just want to point one thing out before I ask for approval. There's a difference between the Hillsborough County funding and the other two. Hillsborough County takes the lead, as we've done historically, on creating annual reports and coordination of reports. So we request our member governments, or excuse me, our FFL folks request funding. We ask them to justify their funding, and so we have 3 different agreements with each member government, with each county, and we're requesting approval of 1-year funding agreements for Hillsborough, Pasco, and Pinellas counties for water year 2020, a total cost of $488,224.
Thank you very much for your really good report, and I can't believe you're only asking for $488,224, because this is an important program. And between the 3 counties, it should be double that. But I guess we don't have any room in our budget.
Just a question, as my understanding, working with the counties, is this their request that they've made of us, or did we?
Basically, yes.
So this is what the counties
Yeah.
actually requested that we fund, is that correct?
Yes, and a follow-up on Commissioner Merman's point. Member governments, so in this case, the counties also provide in-kind services as well and money for the
Right,
program.
I
So it's
know.
not total. Tampa Bay Water's goal, when we started this program funding this back in 1995, was to create kind of a baseline of funding, and then for local governments to kind of match some of that. And so what we see is the counties matching those funds for overhead services and things like that.
Well, I think over the next year, I think it'd be really good if we could figure out, come back with a plan in the next budget year to really expand this.
Yes, ma'am, I was going to ask to clarify that as well, because we'll be happy to have those discussions with each of the 3 counties to see what opportunities do exist, and then come back next year with a report. Mr. Brashano?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, the return on investment is so great for us as county governments,
Yes, ma'am.
city governments, and whatever, to save water, actually. So thank you. Councilwoman Rice?
Yes, thank you. A couple of questions. Had you contemplated ways that member governments could opt in and perhaps separate the money that would be available from administrative support? Because there's some member governments that may already have a pretty robust water conservation program and already have like a branded conservation public outreach process. So some of what's on the table for some member governments, like St. Pete, may not be as helpful, but we could use the funds to help build up and expand our conservation efforts.
I was going to hopefully address that in the next item, but for this item, historically, what we do is we simply provide the block grant to the county, and then that program is administered across the county, and there are specific requirements for the FFL program to meet with every municipality to actually address their issues. So in fact, we ask them to meet with all of our member governments to address those issues The Florida Friendly Landscape brand is this kind of a statewide brand. They work with your staff already and do workshops with your staff. I think, in my opinion, the question is probably more applicable for the next item, but we haven't, I don't know how we would split this item up and create a different branding process. The horticultural expertise is backed up by the University of Florida, and so that's what the FFL program does, is they reach back, use that horticultural expertise, and then work with each government to put on workshops in coordination with that government if the member government wants to take the lead, or if they don't, then they'll come in and do the Florida Friendly Landscape Program. So I don't believe there's any duplication of effort.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by the next item? I didn't.
Item J1B, which is the demand management plan,
Okay.
implementation plan, I believe the city had asked questions about that item specifically. And so I wasn't sure whether you were addressing this item, the Florida Friendly Landscape Program, which has been an ongoing program since 93.
Right.
And one more follow-up question. Thank you for addressing, my question at the last board meeting was if you could take a look at how we would allocate conservation funding based on the percentage paid by each member government previously.
Yes, and that's, J1B is going to talk about that item specifically.
Yep, there's a paragraph.
Okay, sorry, thank you. I'll wait, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Can we move approval?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Smith and, okay, and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Like sign opposed, show that pass. Okay, so now we're on J1B.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and council member. I think I'm going to address some of those questions here. Our goal in this item is to address a couple of questions. I think Commissioner Starkey asked them some questions at the last board meeting. I wanted to have a historical overview of conservation that occurred by the member governments. Discussed how we developed the recommended demand management strategy that we've been working on since last year. Some of the alternative strategies that were suggested for funding and distribution of funds. Councilmember Rice just indicated that, and we hope to answer those questions and address those, and then answer some of the other questions that have been kind of posed and in the background along the way. Just as a background, our first master water plan was developed in the mid-1990s. It identified potential conservation program savings, and basically our first demand management plan came out in 1997. When the partnership agreement with the SWIFMUD was established, there were specific requirements for funding and implementing a variety of conservation programs. SWIFMUD at that time required documentation of programs and estimates of how funds would be spent in the future, so they could make sure elements were consistent with the regional goals that were established in the original master water plan. We worked with the member governments in the 1990s through this Conservation Coordination Consortium. It's been in place for about 27 years now. And to develop these 5-year conservation plans that allowed us to work together to minimize duplication of efforts for similar programs, marketing, and communication. As I mentioned, our main goal of the CCC was to kind of share resources, programming and marketing efforts, and ensure there was adequate communication between Tampa Bay Water, our member governments, SWIFMUD, and the Extension Service, which has all that horticultural expertise. So, so we developed these savings rates for conservation programs, kind of default savings rates based upon what we've seen locally and nationally. And with that, we estimated about 24.5 million gallons of water, potable water per day were saved through 2017. Largest was in Pinellas, and a lot of reclaimed water obviously helped do that, and about almost 5 million gallons of water a day saved indoors. That doesn't include the reductions associated with passive water efficiency that might have taken place if there were no program. So this is the good news. This is what council members, council Councilwoman Starkey asked for in her information. So there's been a lot of good work done to date, and we track all that. All that data is in our database, along with the billing data, to kind of make sure we know what's happened where, so there's no duplication of effort. Where we're at now is that the board approved the demand management goals. They were developed around the premise that demand management will assist the region in determining when new supplies will be built. So if we can save some water, low-hanging fruit versus high-hanging fruit, we could possibly reduce the need for those more expensive supplies. This is one of the 3 pillars determining when to build new facilities. And this has been our primary focus all along in the master water plan, which is to look at demand management and see whether or not we can actually quantifiably reduce the demands in the future. The regional demand management plan, the board approved as part of the local long-term master water plan, is designed to save about 500,000 gallons of water a day in the first year of implementation and more than 11 MGD by 2030 if all the member governments participate. The goal and timing are important because, as John and others have mentioned, the projections show we'll need an additional 10 MGD by 2028. So this program is basically designed to offset some of that demand and delay the need for those new supplies at about half the cost of developing our least alternative supply. We obviously need to save this water, to delay the need to develop new water supply sources. We used member governments' billing data in addition to forecasting demands. We also use that billing data to track where potential programs could be implemented. And obviously, it saves the member governments money, and that was our primary goal when we developed the demand management strategies. So these are some of the benefits. The regional conservation makes sense. It costs less than building new supplies, saves additional operating costs, chemical power. It delays the need for new supplies, which postpones debt. And it shows the residents that we've done everything we can to save water before we develop costly alternative supplies. There's a lot of citizen support out there for this program. I'm going over something we've probably talked about in the past, but we know the public really wants to see this. They want to see us kind of be uniformly moving forward. And finally, according to the district, we need to do this to keep more water in a natural environment. And we have significant CO2 reductions because instead of pumping water every day, we'll be saving that water and reducing CO2 emissions. So status is that we have a member government working group. We just formed this group. Well, we've had about 11 meetings with the member governments prior to the group's formation to discuss existing conservation programs, how they might overlap with demand management plan, and determine if there's significant duplication of effort. The board approved the budget in June 2019 for 2020. The district cooperative funding is coming forward, and we're currently ranked high for 2020. And toward the 2021 co-funding application will go in October 2019. We're currently developing a GIS application. The goal here is something the member governments asked for, which is to put together an outlet that allows everybody to see what's occurring in the region, allow the member governments to use that as well, and allow our third-party administrator to do that as well. We are in a selection process for the third-party administrator right now, and the member governments are all on that selection committee. It's a sunshine-based committee. We are not on that selection committee. There was a question regarding whether we should hire a third-party administrator or implement programs in-house. We were charged in 2014 with looking at ways to evaluate different programs throughout the country and develop implementation strategies that would ensure that we got savings when we identified them. When we determined we wanted to structure the program, the best way was through a third-party administrator through evaluation of various programs. In fact, what we see, and we've done some research on this, that many water utility programs with quantifiable conservation goals either have large staffs internally or they hire a third-party administrator. We have one full-time equivalent demand management position, that's me, while similar utilities with the number of programs or the amount of water saved that we're looking at have average about 12 persons for about 1 MGD annually of savings in various programs. So there is, and that's not counting, obviously, there's some member government expertise out there as well. We know that basically that A majority of our member governments, some of our member governments have about 2 of these 11 programs that they're currently implementing. Those responses to the request for proposal were provided on August the 8th. I wanted to point that out. So we're in the process of working with our member governments to go through the selection process currently. There are 11 programs based on market penetration. Only a few of these programs are being implemented currently in the Tampa Bay region. And there's an annual option to add new programs. So if the programs don't work, or if we don't have the extracted penetration, or we want to add new programs, there's an option how to do that. And those programs were based upon, this is probably the critical thing, they were based upon market penetration. And that's the percentage a given program could be implemented based upon the total potential available. So if there are 1 million customers out there and you want to provide them with an incentive, some of them will buy into the incentive and some of them won't. And that's what market penetration is all about. And obviously the amount of the incentive increases that market penetration, and that's what we've estimated, basically kind of an open market mechanism for evaluating conservation in the region. So what we did, based upon the request, the council member made a request, Rice did in June, we looked at these options. So option 1 is the market-based program, and we're looking at allocation of programs based upon funding that occurred, that comes based upon percentages of either the water purchased in 2018, that's option 2, so how much water did each member government purchase from Tampa Bay Water? And then option 3 is something we looked at because this is a planning document, we're trying to implement programs based upon a plan, and we looked at the percentage of water purchased in the future. So we said, let's look at 2 options. We provided that at the executive meeting in July, and we'll identify that here. This was our original strategy. It assumes that all member governments opt in the table to the right shown here. You'll know Tampa did opt out for 2020, which is their right. It maximized the potential based upon the lowest cost regionally and provides the most potential to defer capital expense from new supply development. And you can see there's about a little over 11 million gallons of water a day based upon those market penetration rates in the region. Option 2, which is the percentage of water that each member government purchased from Tampa Bay Water in 2018. These are the estimated savings from those programs. And so member governments where additional dollars over the recommended market-based approach were provided finish ahead of time, which means if they get more money, they'll finish faster, while others don't get done by 2030, which is the goal that was established by the board in the Master Water Plan. Tampa Bay Water's recommended market-based approach has all member governments completing implementation 11 years. So this shows that about 67% of the money would be spent and about 7 million gallons of water a day would be saved based on this program. And you can see that in the red, for example, at least one of the member governments takes longer than the time that we had allocated originally to complete that with those constraints. Option 3 is a planned water use, not really much different. Funds are allocated based on future plan delivery. This would provide more flexibility in actually writing the numbers. You have to wait for the previous year to be done to actually do the forecast for the next year using previous years. In this case, we get about 600,000 gallons more of water saved, and we rounded that up to about 8 MGD, so you can see the difference between the two. So the summary is that the option 1 is market-based. We estimate about 11 million gallons by 2030. Option 2 is the percentage of past water use in 2018 or purchased from Tampa Bay Water. We estimate about a 7 MGD of savings by 2030. And option 3 is the percentage of planned water use, which is 760 to 800,000 gallons of water a day by 2030. Our recommendation was create an annual goals based upon market-based option 1 programming. These market penetration rates and members could change based on actual performance. Performance and programming constraints allow the ability to switch elements between members or increase or change expectation to meet additional demand in those service areas. We're recommending that we bring this item to the board annually in April for review, discussion, and action. I think the council members suggestion that we have an open discussion about the details of these programs is really critical. I think we should do this ongoing and have a longer discussion about this. This is the time you see the draft budget annually, and members have the opportunity also to opt out by April. And it's kind of around the last time we can modify the SWIFMUD cooperative funding proposals for the upcoming budget year. So with that, I'll take questions.
Okay, questions, comments, discussion? Don't see any. Great report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item.
Yes, ma'am. The J2 is the long-term master water plan feasibility studies presented by Mr. Ken Hurd.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. This is an action item. Staff is requesting board approval of a short list of consulting firms for us to enter into negotiations with these firms and then come back to you in October with contracts for your consideration, specifically for the seawater and the desal feasibility studies. Back in December, the board approved the master water plan update that we've been discussing this morning. This master water plan update included a number of different topics or tools that we're using to ensure that Tampa Bay Water will be able to meet the needs of the member government's water supply in the future. Today, we're just going to focus on the feasibility study of the new water supply sources, but all of these programs kind of interrelate as we move forward. Starting off, in accordance with the interlocal agreement, Tampa Bay Water has the absolute and unequivocal obligation to meet the member government needs at all the points of connection at all times. This requirement is the fundamental basis for our planning with a level of service that meets the member government demands even during a drought condition. Today, things are pretty easy. We've got a lot of water, a lot of surface water. When we're in a drought, we have limited surface water available. So we use this graphic that you see on the chart as a basis to do our forecasting. This is a plot of demand and supply over time and years, and the supply is in million gallons per day. The red line is based on a 1 year or a drought condition supply. So this is when we would have limited surface water available. It is a capacity of about 201 million gallons per day. The black dots on this graph represent historical demand, regional annual average demand, and the green line is a forecasted demand that we look at in terms of projecting when the demand will actually exceed our ability to meet the member needs during a drought condition. So currently, you can see based on our current forecast that we're expecting 2028 to be the year in which we would need to have additional supply online in order to fulfill our obligation that's identified in the interlocal agreement. And one important point to make here is that we update these forecasts on an annual basis. And that's because the economic changes occur, growth occurs and changes, and also we have the benefit of evaluating historic water use to help us kind of position ourselves as we look forward to the future. So we do that every year, and as Mr. Bracciano just said, you know, by the time we get to a point of making a decision on the next water supply sources, we'll have a couple years of experience and data available from the demand management program that could affect our future forecast in terms of when new water supply will be available. So I'm going to steal Mayor Marlowe's idea about looking into the future and kind of working our way backwards. So I'm not going to go out 20 years, but I'm going out to this 2028 date. That's when we forecast that we would need to have additional supply online based on current conditions. So let's work backwards from that date to see kind of where are we today in relation to that important milestone. So if we consider about a 3-year construction period to build the new project and about a 6-month bidding period, that means that we would need to begin that process around the middle of 2025. And if we give ourselves another 2.5 years to complete permitting, design, property acquisition for the new project, that means that we would need to make a decision on what supply project we move forward with by the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, in that time frame. So if we provide the board with a year of evaluation time, that means you would have a whole year to go through public input on the alternatives that we're evaluating, board workshops, discussion, consideration of the criteria in order to make a decision on which project to move forward with. So we're allowing for an entire year to conduct the due diligence, allow the board to do that before making this critical decision. And what this means is that we'll have until the end of 2021 to complete our water supply feasibility studies, which is the subject of this item today, is performing these studies. And that gives us about a 2-year period to go through and evaluate these projects, to make sure that you have the best available information before making a decision on which project to move forward with for the region. So these are the 3 options that are identified in the master water plan for further study, including the desal project, the surface water alternative, and the new groundwater well field and treatment plant using aquifer recharge credits from the South Hillsborough Aquifer Recharge Project. So now I want to go over the schedule for the desal plant, just to give you an idea of the scope and the timing involved with this. So the first part of this study will involve looking at the condition assessment. So you want to look at the condition of our existing facility and equipment, kind of know where we are before we can estimate where we need to go or what needs to be done to get where we need to be. So we have that included. A lot of studies have been performed, as we've discussed, on the desal plant to date. Most of those studies have focused on changes that could be made, kind of minor changes to the facility to improve its efficiency, as well as the reliability of the plant. These studies have all looked at things short of doing a wholesale change-out of the pretreatment system. So what we're looking at as part of this feasibility study includes looking at alternative pretreatment processes, and that requires pilot testing. And the pilot testing can be somewhat costly, but we believe that it's a very wise investment, and we've learned that from our experience with the desal plant, how important the pretreatment process is to the overall performance of the facility. So the pilot testing will include all the major treatment processes in the plant, including the cartridge filters, the security filters, and the reverse osmosis membrane. So it's a very comprehensive test to make sure that what we would be proposing as an option would be viable and something that could be implemented successfully for the region. Another aspect of this study will look at optimization. We're looking at what are some things that could be done to the plant in order to provide us with additional reliability or additional sustainable capacity, because our planning numbers are based on annual averages or more long-term production quantities that we can rely on from these facilities. So we're looking at that, so it would be something that could be done short of doing an expansion. What could be done to the existing plant to make it more reliable and provide us with some additional sustainable capacity? So all of that will be done, and we'll complete the reports within a 2-year window. So this study is scheduled to be complete by the end of 2021 in time for the board's deliberation of the alternatives. And now moving forward with the surface water study. It will include a water quality evaluation, looking at all the alternative source waters. Then we will also include an optimization component to this, where what are some things that could be done to tweak the facility in order to improve the sustainability or sustainable capacity of this facility. We're also looking at doing the design, looking at the possibility of locating the additional treatment off-site. So we're looking at expanding the existing facility, and also with input from the member governments, utility staffs, we're looking at an alternative location somewhere near the reservoir down in the South County service area as a potential new location for surface water treatment. And that goes along with the discussion that Mr. Kennedy had earlier with some of the things that we're looking at, both short-term. This would be a long-term option for meeting needs in South County. So all of this work will be done well within our window of end of 2021. So we'll have that project as we move forward. We should have that information available to you. And then we have the SHARP project. We're currently moving forward with developing a test well so that we can perform aquifer performance testing to make sure that the quantities that are developed can be permitted by the Water Management District. So we expect to be back in front of the board probably early next year with a site. So we're in the process right now of acquiring or looking at alternative sites to perform this test. And then that work will continue once a site is acquired, and we'll be performing well testing up into early 2021. We'll be doing modeling using that data to determine what capacities can be realized from this project, and also water quality testing and processes, treatment processes will be looked at. Another important point here is that we'll be working with the county on establishing the SHARP credits. And that will be done through working with the county again on another memorandum of understanding, so that we can hopefully, by the end of this planning process, or this window, have an understanding of what would the credit amount be required from the county in order for us to move forward with the project, or at least to evaluate the total cost of the project. So this work, along with the desal and surface water, is anticipated to be done by the end of 2021 in time for your evaluation. One very important point that I'd like to make about these feasibility studies, and I want to make this very clear. The Southwest Florida Water Management District is currently set to fund half of these studies. So this graphic gives you some idea of the perspective of the costs that we're looking at. We're looking at project costs, total capital costs, that exceed, hundreds of millions of dollars. So when you look at, and it's even on some of these, it's hard to even see the cost of these feasibility studies. The dark line at the bottom gives you some perspective in that the total cost of these feasibility studies is less than 1% of the total cost of these projects. So we believe that this is a very wise investment for the region to do our due diligence, to obtain the best available information that we can on water supply project alternatives prior to coming to you and making a recommendation on which project to move forward with. Here you can see these costs. These are estimated costs. We'll be coming back to you, like I said, in October with the actual contract amounts. But with the district funding half of the cost, it even brings that percentage down of Tampa Bay water expenditure even lower. And then once we have a memorandum of understanding with the county on the SHARP project, we expect that we'd be in a position to pursue cooperative funding for that project and be successful as well. So the procurement process, we did advertise the request for proposals. We received 2 proposals for the surface water plant, and the selection committee has ranked Hazen and Sawyer as the top-ranked firm. That is staff's recommendation. And then we have the desal plant expansion study. We had 4 respondents with proposals on that, and the top-ranked firm was Black and Veatch. So it is staff's recommendation that the board authorize us to move forward with contract negotiations with the top-ranked firms, Hazen and Sawyer for the surface water plant, and Black and Veatch for desal. And with that, I'll be happy to address any questions.
Great, thank you, Ken. Great report and very thorough. Appreciate the feedback. Any comments, questions?
Just real quick.
Commissioner Eckers.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you, Chairman. It was a really good report. I appreciate the perspective that you gave us on the cost of the studies as it relates to the total capital. The only question I have, you are one of our leading experts on the knowledge of the desal plant over the years, and there's been a lot of different studies done on that plant. So it's your recommendation, basically. I mean, you can build off those studies, but that the new effort that will be undertaken will be kind of an exclusive look at what we're doing and much needed. In other words, we're not going to be able to pull on other studies to your comfort level as we evaluate the desal option.
Yes, Commissioner, absolutely. I mean, we will be able to use that information to make sure that we can, for instance, prioritize the condition assessment, making sure that we're looking at the right equipment as far as establishing that. But this study that we're proposing is actually going to compile all of that information and looking at where we are today, and then help us bridge to what it would cost to get us at different points or alternative, whether it's expanding or it's optimizing the plan. It would help us to better define what it would take to get to those different points.
And my last question, assuming we get to the end of the process, which we will in those 3 studies, will we also have an assessment of SwiftMud, how they look at the project and their likelihood and what percentage that they'll support those projects?
Yes, that would be part of the evaluation, and we'll be working very closely with the Water Management District through that process as we have to date. So, yes,
Of course.
absolutely.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it.
Madam Chair, move J2.
Okay, we have a motion to approve J2. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Commissioner Oakley for discussion,
I
yes.
appreciate your report. I heard from staff the other day, they were talking on the desal plant of lowering the temperature coming to the plant. What effect will that have on it? Because we know that the temperature of 98 degrees is where it works the best. If it goes lower than that, are we going to have to heat that water to bring it in the plant?
The potential changes that could occur to the source water is being evaluated as part of the study. So they will consider any changes that TECO plans to make in terms of changing their power or their source from coal to natural gas. So that's what was being referred to as a potential reduction in temperature. But yes, that will be all considered as part of this study in terms of how could that affect the production and reliability of the plant. So yes, it will all be kind of included as part of the overall scope.
Right. And then also, on the surface water, is there maybe an idea of expand the surface water to another surface water area where you can bring more water in? Because like right now, we're 15 inches over waterfall right now for this year, more than last year, and we could be capturing all that water. So, and I guess you're capturing as much as you can, so.
Yes, we are, as part of the scope for surface water, looking at the potential for locating a new surface water plant down in South Hillsborough County, in addition to expanding the existing plant. So we are looking at both of those options.
And do you know if the city of Tampa is able to capture any of that additional water coming down Hillsborough River? Because from Pasco County, there's a lot of water going to city of Tampa through that river right now.
Yeah, it seems like we're either in feast or famine condition lately. So right now, there's an abundance of water available from the surface water. So that's why it's important to have these storage components in our system to be able to store that water for future times when we're not going to be experiencing a lot of rainfall.
Do we store that coming down Harrisburg River? Because that goes to the city of Tampa, that water. Do we store that for them?
Yeah, once that exceeds what's considered a minimum flow into the lower Hillsborough, we can take a certain percentage of that water into the middle pool of the canal and then on down to our pump station.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Councilwoman Rice.
Thank you. Ken, this is a great report. Thank you. And I certainly support the staff recommendation for both of these contracts. I was curious about I lost track of what's happening on the timeline for the Hillsborough MOU.
Well, that, if we can recall back on that timeline, because we have a test well program underway, it bought us some additional time to negotiate that, so it's really not on a critical path at this time, but the critical path will be if we can get that in hand before 2021 funding cycle for the Water Management District. I think that's probably what we need to shoot for, to make sure we have that sometime, probably early next year would be preferable.
Okay, any other discussion? We have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that passed. I do believe they brought lunch in for us. If y'all want to take a short break now, or do you want to keep on going? It's up to y'all.
Let's take a short break.
Short break. Okay, about 10 minutes. Nothing against your report. Okay, thank you all. Thank you for that short break. And we're ready to resume our agenda on J3.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Today's water quality presentation will provide a brief update on the Exhibit D modification study. Quick history of Exhibit D. The standards were initially developed with expert input in 1988 and 1999. They were evaluated as requested by member governments and modified in 2004. Now, approximately 15 years later, member governments have requested a reevaluation of the Exhibit D standards. This is ongoing today. We have been referring to this reevaluation as the Exhibit D modification study. The top priority for evaluation and potential modification were identified by the member governments. The water quality parameters, their proposed limits, and priorities were established by all member governments agreeing on the study scope. Highest priority is TOC, total organic carbon, as presented at the last board meeting. Color, iron, sulfide, hardness, and others follow as shown on this slide. The study is being implemented in 3 phases. Phase 2 is now nearing completion. The study objectives are to evaluate the desired water quality concentrations, available treatment technologies to achieve those concentrations, and to provide planning level capital and operating cost estimates for all identified treatment alternatives. Most importantly, the desired water quality concentrations need to be delivered to all points of connection between Tampa Bay Water and the member governments. Our current status. All lab studies were completed in mid-July. Initial data review and model runs were completed in the beginning of August. Initial treatment options and conceptual cost estimates were reviewed with a consultant in mid-August, and refinement on those items continues today. Our next steps. A draft report with the basis for treatment options, and estimated costs will be submitted to the member governments by mid-next month. a presentation and initial workshop to receive member government's input, exchange ideas, and obtain consensus or redirection is scheduled for the end of next month. Depending on member government's input, we anticipate bringing recommendations to the board later this year. Potential options for the board could include adding capital improvement projects, modifying Exhibit D standards, a combination of these two options, or maintaining the status quo. This completes today's brief water quality update on the Exhibit D modifications and our progress. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Steve. This is a topic that is probably my most important topic of consideration. As you know, I've been very vocal on this board almost since day one about water quality, and I'm really glad to see that you've taken the steps. I look forward to the report. Are there any comments? Councilwoman
Chair.
Rice.
I'm curious, as part of the process here, do we need to build in some time where member governments can take staff recommendations back to our jurisdictions to get a resolution supporting us to bring back? I think there's been incidences in the past where we've done that when we've switched to chloramines.
Yes, as we said, we anticipate bringing recommendations to the board in December. What we expect is that after that first work session we have, that initial workshop and presentation at the end of September, that the months of October and November would be used for that purpose. What may come after the initial end of September meeting is that we may find we need to have another workshop to flesh out ideas if certain members want to go in a different direction. It isn't to say that we'll have final recommendations to the board by December. It all depends on the interaction of our staff and the member governments, and then going to you all to get your backing as you need.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure your understanding is that we're building in plenty of time for us to confer with our home governments.
Absolutely. This is a very important and large project, and we're absolutely bringing that into account.
And just promise me we're not going to kick the can down the road like they did 15 years ago or 10. Well, back 2005, 2006, right?
It was back about then, yes.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we've built into this program is a very comprehensive approach. And so what that means is we're not going to come to you with, here's the cost to meet all the Exhibit D requirements, and it's going to be an astronomical number.
Absolutely.
We will be presenting a number like that for point of reference, but what we'll also be doing is providing a menu of options. But above all, that menu is going to result in generating similar water quality at all points of connection. That's the key to this.
That's what I want to hear. I'm telling you, this, if we have good water quality, I'm telling you, people will be happy. And no matter what we do here, whatever direction we take, I'll reclaim, I mean, people will say, well, we have good water. You know, so I think it's all good for us. Thank you all very much. Any comments? Seeing none, thank you for your report.
Yes, ma'am. Next item is J4, and that is a as-needed well pump repair and maintenance contract presented by Mr. Ken Hurd.
Morning, or good afternoon, I guess, almost afternoon. Madam Chair, board members, this is an action item. Staff is requesting your approval of as-needed well construction and pump repair projects. We have a number of production wells and monitor wells throughout our system. These contracts were competitively bid. We're recommending contracts be awarded to A.C. Schultz of Florida and Southeast Drilling Services in the amount of $600,000 per contract. So each contractor will have two contracts, one for the well pump repair and one for well evaluation, rehab, and construction. These are 3-year contracts with 2 option years to renew on board approval. So it is staff's recommendation the board approve these contracts.
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second to approve your pump repair item. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that passed. And we're now on to the next item with Christine.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and members of the board. At the end of this presentation, I will be requesting board approval. Tampa Bay Water is contractually required to account for unexpended funds at year end. These funds are to be transferred into the utility reserve, rate stabilization, or other funds within 90 days of the fiscal year end close. Any of funds approved to be carried forward are transferred back to the appropriate budget categories in the operating fund at the start of the next fiscal year for their designated use. Generally accepted accounting principles require staff to record these transfers after all invoice activity is recorded and before closing the year end. To facilitate a timely close, each August, staff brings estimated year-end transfers to the board for approval. After completion of the audit, the final transfer amounts are reported to the board, usually in February, along with the balance of the agency's various funds. The recommended transfers to carry forward funds into 2020 include an amount of funds equal to the fiscal year 19 open purchase orders, estimated at about $7.1 million. These represent board-approved activities that were budgeted and funds encumbered in fiscal year 19, but could not be completed prior to the end of the fiscal year. $4.2 million of unencumbered funds to meet costs of the fiscal year 20 budget as approved by the board in June, plus a total of $1.5 million of unencumbered funds for activities listed on the slide that were planned and approved in fiscal year 19 budget, but the funds were not encumbered prior to the fiscal year end. Based upon fiscal year activity through June, we are estimating an additional $13.8 million in unencumbered funds available at year end to transfer into other funds. This is based upon projected increase in revenue and investments and reduced expenditures in water for resale, power and chemicals, personnel services, professional services, and repairs and other services. We are recommending the following year-end transfers. Up to $5 million plus retention of interest into the capital improvement fund, retention of interest into the renewal and replacement fund, up to $500,000 plus retention of interest in utility reserve, and approximately $8.3 million or other such amount that remains available at year-end into the rate stabilization account. Estimated year-end account balances after the recommended transfers are shown on the slide, and the final fiscal year 19 transfers and account balances, again, will be reported to the board after audit completion. Staff is recommending approval for year-end transfers as noted in item K1 to close the fiscal year 2019. This concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Great report. We have a motion to approve by Councilman Miranda, seconded by? Second by Commissioner Smith. Is there any discussion?
Just one
Yeah.
quick question. I really appreciated the additional amount going into this rate stabilization fund. Maybe the general manager could just speak briefly as to the buildup in that account and when he potentially anticipates its use.
Yes, sir. I'll be happy to address that. And the board has a policy or target to try to maintain about 10% of our operating budget in rate stabilization, which is around $18 million. This transfer, if it ends up being these numbers after the audit, based on this estimate, would put us around $31 million. We are, Ms. Saget and I have been having discussions about our debt and as far as any additional debt for capital projects in the near future. And also looking at the fact that in 2028, around that time frame, we have about $10 million per year in debt payment relief. That's when the member government acquisition credits are satisfied. So we're looking for a way to have cash and also some financing that we can do to bridge those 4 years we have about that would give us till we get to that debt relief, and try to do that in an effort to try to keep our rates, our water rate that we charge member governments as level as possible. And again, Ms. Saget's still working on that, and I think we've got, and this buildup of cash will help that above the minimum the board looks for. But again, any funds that go into rate stabilization, these are funds at the board's discretion. Things can happen between now and then. At the board's discretion, you can move these funds wherever. Our goal is to come up with a plan and give the board several financial options as we move into perhaps the next debt issuance and maybe even reducing how much we have to borrow.
Thank you for that. I think it's really important that we're looking at all those options as we go forward. And so I appreciate the diligence and the extra funds and look forward to continuing to monitor that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Yeah, I do think it's important, number one, that we reduce our debt and that we don't raise our rates. And that's what the rate stabilization fund does do. It enables us to keep our rates. I think this year was the 7th year.
Fiscal year 20 will be the 9th.
Be the 9th, okay. So, we can tell, our ratepayers that we're keeping their rates low. So it's really good. Okay, great. We have a motion and a second to approve K1. Is it no further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Like sign opposed, show it passed. And K2.
K2 is in regards to the management and performance audit, and I will be requesting board approval at the end of this presentation. Per the interlocal agreement, after the first full fiscal year and at 5-year intervals, the agency is required to conduct a performance audit and management study. The objectives are to review the agency's programs and activities and to evaluate the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of operations to assure board-approved goals and strategies are being met. The audit benefits management in identifying agency strengths, opportunities for improvement, and providing recommendations for change. In 2015, KPMG's report stated that Tampa Bay Water appears to be a well-performing organization committed to effective performance, operations, communication, and continuous improvement as evidenced from project fieldwork. The report identified a total of 58 recommendations, including 32 that were already in various stages of implementation, and 15 that were classified as key recommendations for the agency to prioritize. Management reviewed the recommendations and found many were already reflected in the agency's strategic plan and incorporated the remaining 9 into the plan. Out of the 58 recommendations, 25 have been completed, 25 are in progress, 6 are continually ongoing, and 2 are planned within the next year. September 30th will mark the end of the 4th 5-year interval and triggers a management and performance audit. Through the request for proposal procurement process, Clifton Larson Allen was the top-ranked firm. They will carry out the 2020 audit through 6 primary tasks shown in this graphic. This includes reaching out to board members and member staff, government staff, for comments and opinions. Staff recommends awarding contract 2020-001 to Clifton Larson Allen in the amount of $178,000 for the 2020 management and performance audit. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have a question.
Back to the page 3, you said there was key 15. I think it was 15.
15
key. How many of those recommendations have been completed?
Out of those, 12 were, 5 have been completed, 8 are in progress, and 2 are continuously ongoing out of the 15.
And those recommendations came in the 2015 report?
Correct.
Any comments as to the rationale behind the ones that aren't finished yet? Do we have any operational comments on that?
I think it's a matter of, if I may, just a matter of continuing to work in through those objectives. They were most of these were already part of our strategic plan. And of course, the audit study did emphasize the fact that these were things that we needed to continue working toward. What I would offer at this is to, and I don't think Ms. Saget has that particular detail in front of her at this moment, but we're happy to bring that back and share that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Move
Any further
approval.
comments? We have a motion to approve and a second to approve the audit contract. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that passed. Okay. Am I in charge of L1? I think so.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. L1 is the general manager's 2019 performance evaluation. Here is my, basically, I wanted to let you all know, getting into this process, I really started from scratch. We did not have an evaluation tool, per se. And I did consult quite a bit with my HR director at my county, who tried to help guide me along for a summary, to pull a summary together. I work with the HR director here. I don't know if she's here. Rachel? Yeah, great. Thank you. It was great. We were working together and trying to come up with a tool to evaluate Mr. Jordan. And then going back to the employment agreement, I also had our HR people look at it in comparison like to our county administrator and came up with also some specific suggestions. So let's just do the evaluation summary first, and I'll open it up to the floor for discussion, and I do think we should take a vote to approve the evaluation. Any comments? Motions? Mr. Eggers?
Well, yeah, Matt and I have had quite a few conversations over the past months, and if you look at my evaluation, it was probably a little bit lower than the average valuations across the board, and most of mine was centered around potentially the improvement of leadership and coordination with member governments, and maybe a little stronger leadership during some tested times. And I think we've discussed that. He certainly feels in some areas he has done that. In other areas he feels, or at least in conversations with me, that things could be just a little bit better. I know it's been a difficult couple of years, enduring an awful lot of comments, questions, reflection on the organization, criticism from different places, because of the process that we've been going through with the conversations with the reclaimed issue. So I think there's been a lot on his plate, and the same with our council. There's been a lot on her plate as well. And to the spirit that we've talked about earlier about working together as a collegial body. I think everybody seems like everybody's nodding. We're nodding heads that that's really an important thing that I think that a couple of the members brought up today. So I think with that, there will be a groundwork, I think, that we can build on. So from my perspective, there's been areas of improvement that I've identified with Matt, and so going forward, I hope to see those improvements. And also, I want to say that despite all of that, the financial report that we just got was encouraging. I think that we're doing good things long term. So from that getting ready for that change, and from the mid 2020s to the kind of early 2030s, that we're going to need some additional bridge debt. I think that's really a feather in the team's cap, and the continued effort to identify projects that are critical to establishing future water supplies, and how the effort to work with our member governments to identify water quality issues, responding to the board, but also as part of the process that they normally go through. It's a very cumbersome job that falls on that on Matt, and I again he knows I've been somewhat critical at times, but at the same time I I feel like I have a very open and good relationship with him, and feel like I can pick up the phone and call and complain if I need to. And he's been very good about responding. And so I would, just say that I would say that he has had meets objectives from my perspective, and look for improvements in certain key areas. But good job overall. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? And before you all received yours, I did go over the numbers with Mr. Jordan. I think it's important that a CEO in any organization know where they stand. I think it's critically important, but there's so many positives on here, and I think the concerns he's working hard to address, especially with each board member, and he's reaching out to everyone to discuss, what we feel may be areas of improvement. And so I think it's all good communication and feedback between the board members and him going forward. Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner Smith?
Yes, as one of the newer members on the board, I do, as all of us, sit on a lot of other boards and agencies and deal with administration in other places. And I would just like to make sure to state on the record at this annual opportunity that I have had a very good welcome and relationship with our director, and really appreciate, as Commissioner Eggers mentioned, being able to pick up the phone at any time. I appreciate having the ability to have honest, frank, open discussions, whatever perspective we're in, whatever the issue is, and know that I'll get the correct information so that we can all make decisions. I've had a really great onboarding, and really appreciate the work that you've done and the relationship we're establishing. So thank you.
Okay. That's,
Madam Chair?
yes, oh, please.
If I may, and I certainly appreciate any feedback or direction the board would like to give. Obviously, it's my objective to meet those needs. And as the chair mentioned, I have reached out in any comment to make sure that I understand, and what my goal is to turn any comment into an action item, something I can address. And there are a lot of things the board is working through, and I want to certainly do all I can to help accommodate that. And so again, I appreciate the comments. I take them very seriously and will continue to follow up. And I would also like to thank, all the things we accomplish here at Tampa Bay Water come from the men and women of Tampa Bay Water, and I very much appreciate all their support. Thank you.
You're so responsive. You're like, you're right there. So it really makes us feel good that you're on top of things, and you've got great staff and put a good executive team together.
Thank you.
So can
one more
I did want to, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I wanted to ask about the merit increase for Mr. Jordan. Could you come forward? Did he get what the employees got? Or do we have to vote on that?
Roberta Kenny, Director of Human Resources. Pursuant to his contract, he will get the percentage that was given to the management team.
And that was the 3%?
3.3%, as I recall.
3.3%, okay. I just wanted to make sure that's covered, because I also think that's very important, that we know what we're doing with that. Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the evaluation
So moved.
2019? We have a motion and a second to approve. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Like, sign, opposed, show that pass. And then at, I think it was the last board meeting or executive meeting, we brought up to review the employment agreement. I think Councilwoman Rice, you brought that up also?
I did ask about it just based on other experiences going through performance review. with other agencies, that was something usually that we took a look at, or usually we were asked to make a recommendation for a merit increase, but in this case, it's automatically included in the contract, whatever we do, so it kind of made that point moot.
Okay, I did review the contract, and I do think that there are some things for his best interest and for ours that need to be reviewed. I don't think we need to go over them today, but I would like you all to go over the employment agreement and send suggestions to Miss Katie. Because number one, it's very interesting. There's no specific employment term. I'm talking number of years in his agreement, so it's pretty much open-ended. Usually contracts have like you're under a 3-year contract or a 5-year contract. The other was, and something I think would benefit him, you know, if there was a termination, he would continue his salary and benefits rather than us agreeing on a lump sum. And I know we always do lump sum. Going forward, there was the vacation and sick leave was, and then also professional consultation. If he would want to do that he needs to come to the board and let us know when he does that. There should be the word reasonable under professional development. And really, that's it. Those are some minor things. But I do think, and then there was a section about indemnification that I think you'll find if you go back to your county or city governments, you'll see the indemnification clause is pretty, is weak in this employment agreement and probably needs to be worded more strongly. But I'm going to give my suggestions over to Ms. Katie. If any of you have any, please go back to her, and then we'll have that brought back here, for discussion moving forward. But I do think that, I mean, for his protection too, it's not just, we want to make a change. I think it helps him. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with your comments. I not the specific nature of them, but just that we need to take a look at this and get some input. I just had one other thing, if Matt could bring this forward at some future time, and that is just a sense of kind of middle management, upper management that we have in their years of experience and kind of a succession planning that might be going on to develop talents within the organization. I have no sense of that, and I think it would be really good for us to get a feel for the organization and how we're doing as far as retaining people, but also developing them for, not that any of the 4 up front ever plan to retire, but when they do, how are we getting people at all levels ready to move up? That would be, I think, a good thing for us to.
We want to make sure you have enough young kids to back them up. Yes, Mayor.
I think it's a good point just for the long-term viability of making sure we're grooming folks for future leadership. But, also if the unthinkable happens, I know Matt and members of the management team come out and visit us, and those roads are dangerous, and I don't want to wish ill on any of them, but if a group of them gets hit by a Mack truck, I'd like to know that we've got a plan in place to fill in the holes as quick as we can.
Just to further the comment, in Pinellas County, I know that, for instance, there's been some numbers, and I'm not going to quote numbers, but they're in their like low 50s for our average age in our organization. In a lot of areas, that tends to reflect. And so continuing to succession planning and doing those mentoring programs in our schools to show, to get out there and show folks what the amazing alternatives you have to work at an organization like this, the different caliber of work and also the different quality of work that goes on here, whether it's in utility companies in our counties, cities, or right here, I think would be a great program to make sure at least we understand what we're doing. So thank you.
Okay, Mr. Jordan?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you, and I appreciate the comments and in particular about the discussion about my employment contract. Certainly, if there's some things the board, would like to consider, I understand that. I would just appreciate the opportunity to review that and look at all these things together.
Absolutely.
I'd appreciate that in considering moving forward.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Yeah, that's a two-way street here.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, that finishes with L. I do need a motion to receive and file.
So move.
We have a motion to receive and file. Second? Second. We have a second. Is there any discussion on receive and file? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed. Show that passed. And is there any further business to come before the board? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all.